welcome everyone. It is the Mark Schultz Memorial Podcast for his brother Dave Schultz, who passed away, or was murdered, I should say, 20 years ago today. So today is 1/26/2016. You can do the math on that. Dave was an awesome guy. We all miss him, loved him. Many, many people loved him. And we've got Mark Schultz here today to talk about what this 20-year mark means to him. And go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. Hey, Roger. A friend of mine notified me about the importance that I do something on the media about this, because this is the 20th anniversary, and I just wanted to do something for. I know I'm not, I know Dave wouldn't want me to. Dave would never think that it was necessary for me to keep his memory alive or anything like that. But I just thought people might be interested just in who Dave was and the significance of the murder of Dave Schultz by the richest capital offender in history. And, Dave was an Olympic and world wrestling champion. He's a great, great man. Some people thought he was crazy, but, I loved him. He's my brother. He's the only full-blood brother I have. And, both of my father only had 2 children, and both of them became Olympic wrestling champions. And one of them was murdered 20 years ago. And it was made into this movie, Foxcatcher, starring Channing Tatum as me, Mark Ruffalo as Dave, Steve Carell as John DuPont. Steve Carell and Mark Ruffalo were both nominated for Oscars. The director was nominated for an Oscar. Bennett Miller. Screenwriters Max Fry and Dan Futterman were nominated for Oscars. It's the book Foxcatcher, my book, my autobiography. I called it Foxcatcher basically to be honest with you, to take advantage of the movie the publicity surrounding the movie. But, it was my story that they used, and so I thought, why not use the name? So I just thought, people might be interested. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, I think that there are dynamics here at work. One of the dynamics is that you have a guy who's an Olympic gold medalist who's murdered by this lunatic. I don't know if the DuPont must be billionaires, right? At least worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well,
go ahead.
DuPont, John DuPont himself was worth, I think, an estimated $280 million. Not only is today the anniversary of Dave's murder, it's also the birthday of Valentin Giordano, the guy who wrestled, Dave brought to Foxcatcher Farms, who wrestled and won the 1996 Olympics and inherited most, I think 80% of DuPont's wealth. It's his birthday today, which,
wow.
DuPont was buried in his, he would tell people that he was part Bulgarian. He was, Valentin Giordano became like his best friend, I guess. And, it was like, there's something about his birthday. There's something DuPont was always telling me about, the importance of his birthday, November 22nd. But, today's Valentin's birthday. I don't know how old he's. I think he's like 56, maybe 57. I'm not sure. But he's a great man, great wrestler, great Bulgarian. He's the president of the Bulgarian Wrestling Federation. And I was recently contacted by a guy who wanted to do a documentary type of film about King Boris the second or third, I think. He saved the entire Jewish population. He contacted me, trying to contact Valentin, because he knew I was half Jewish. My dad's Jewish, and so I don't know what's going to happen there. It's just, I don't know. Life is weird. Life is weird.
Well, nobody expects to be murdered in the prime of their life. I mean, that just doesn't cross your mind, especially if you're living out on a big farm with a bunch of millionaires and a bunch of dead broke wrestlers trying to figure out how to get the next Olympics games going, or the next world championship thing or whatever. You're just not focusing or thinking about crazy stuff like that. And I know DuPont was nuttier than a train load full of payday bars, but I don't think anybody really would have thought he was going to come shoot somebody. Maybe they would have. I don't know, but it just seems really weird to me. And I got to wonder, was Dave happy doing that? Did he enjoy being there at that place, or was he just there because he didn't have any other options? What was the deal with him?
I think it was a situation where his options was financially and to continue competing were very limited. And the farm afforded him the ability to keep competing without having to work a second job. And I think he was happy there because of this fact that he could do this and keep doing what he loved and achieve his potential. And I just, and nobody obviously, well, not obvious. It's not obvious that nobody expected him to commit a murder. I mean, DuPont pulled a gun on my friend, NCAA champion Dan Chade, before he committed the murder. And there were signs that there was trouble in Paradise, and this 800-acre estate, that belonged to the DuPont family, or at least to John DuPont. It seemed like it was too good to be true. It was like an idyllic situation, and I don't think. I know Dave would have never expected DuPont to just drive up and murder him with a .44 Magnum. There was a documentary called The Prince of Pennsylvania that was made about the murder, and I hate the fact that my entire life is defined by this stupid murder. I know I shouldn't disrespect it. You should never disrespect pain, and I know it was just incredibly painful for Dave and to not know why he was leaving the earth. But it bothers me that my entire life, my entire autobiography, everything is defined by this act of pure selfishness and evil. Right. Selfishness and evil are the same thing.
Well, I mean, it's a legitimate defining moment, though. It's legit that this is one of those events that defines something for someone in their life. It's a big deal. I mean, how many people are set up in a situation where their brother is murdered by the guy that they were out actually living in the same arena with, hanging out with. I mean, it's just kind of weird that your brother even ended up there. I mean, I think that's still kind of a novel concept that Dave even ended up at Foxcatcher after all the heartache that you went through there. So all of it's
right.
All of it's driven by some weird force that we can't define, but it is a defining moment in itself. To have your life shaped by it, look, you and Dave were, I don't want to say you were inseparable, but you guys were like Mutt and Jeff growing up, and you were close, and so you lost a part of yourself, really, and
right.
And I mean, I don't because I only knew Dave as a kid, but I would think that Dave would be happy that his memory's been kept alive. Not so much for his own sake, but for the sake of the legacy of wrestling, which he loved, because wrestling's not what it used to be.
Yes, Matter of fact, there's I heard they're going to drop wrestling from the 2020 Olympics, and it wrestling is, I don't know. I think they're going to replace it with jujitsu or something.
Yeah, they want something more entertaining that's a little more crowd pleasing, and you know, these martial arts, the cage fighting, the tough man competitions, all these things, they become part of a marketing element that permeates from within society that makes people money. And nobody likes to have anything happen that doesn't make them money, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, we live in a pretty brutal society here in America. That the movie No Country for Old Men says this country's hard on people. That is right. This country is hard on people. Yeah. And, unless you can figure out some way to survive, it's not like Denmark, where everybody's supposed to be the same and not stand out. Here in America, if you don't stand out, you will be crushed down. And it's just, I don't know, the forces, it's like you said, the forces of the universe that conspired to bring all these things about it's a mystery. And I just, the book that I wrote, it became a New York Times bestseller in 2 categories. Murder and mayhem is one category, and Olympic sports is the other. And I just thought, man, what kind of life have I led where my book is the best, my life story is the bestseller in murder and mayhem? I mean, so odd. I just didn't expect it. I didn't want it. I don't even like it, really. It just is. It just happens. It's weird.
Do you stay in contact with with Dave's family at all, Mark?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I got a message today from his widow, Nancy. She sent me a message. A mass email went out to a bunch of her friends, and I had spoken to Dave's kid, just coincidentally, a couple days. Alexander, his son. He named his son after Alexander Karelin, the 13-time world Olympic champion. I spoke to him a couple days ago. He's doing some charity work for the Syrian refugees in Greece, apparently. I know it's a very hot political topic. I don't want to get into it. That's not my purpose. I have no desire to talk about that. But, I mean, he's just trying to, I don't know, he's find his place like we're all trying to find our place. And
right. Well, people want to make their contribution in life. So, more power to him. What do you think that Dave would say was his greatest accomplishment?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, he's Olympic champion, he's world champion. He had 2 kids. He had a lot of great accomplishments. He was a 7 or 8 time national champion. He won maybe he was a 10-time national. I can't remember. He won the nationals so many times, and he was voted the outstanding wrestler 4 times. I know that. I don't know. He's an incredible force of nature. Just the fact that I was born into the same family as him is. It's. I don't know. I don't think I could point to one thing. I mean, to define or distill someone's life down to one great thing. I don't. It's kind of diminishing, to like list that, make a list. I don't know. Everybody loves lists.
I mean, when you would talk to Dave, what was the topic always the game, or was there more more depth, more width, more?
Oh yeah, I would never talk to him about wrestling. It was always about just insignificant stuff. And just like, what you been up to? Just blah blah blah. We never talked about the most important thing, which was technique and training and all that stuff, because we both knew the deal. We both knew what the other guy had to, what it took, to win. In that kind of level, it wasn't something. I don't know. I just didn't talk about it.
Well, I mean, Dave had hobbies. He liked hunting and shooting and different things.
Yeah.
I mean, that, I suppose, set him apart from you. You didn't get into that stuff much, did you?
Well, I didn't then, but I am now. Dave was really into guns, and I just recently got into guns lately, and I don't know if it was because of the threat to the Second Amendment or what, but I went out and bought a bunch of guns, and also I was robbed, so I got a gun to protect myself. And anyway, he was really into reloading and shooting. It was just ironic that he was murdered by a gun when he was like, that was his main, hunting, and it was like his main interest. And I don't know, it's just weird. I can't explain it.
Well, maybe it can't be explained. I'm trying to give people, it's the 20-year anniversary of his murder. I want people to have a little bit of a feel for him. Beyond the wrestler, there was this guy who had a wife and a couple of kids and interests and hobbies. And, sometimes you were talking about not being defined by a single incident. But importantly for Dave, that he was more than just a wrestler, I guess is my point. I mean, he was a great wrestler, but he was way more than that.
Yeah. Dave had a certain light in his eyes. He just, I don't know, he had this memory before he was born, about standing in the clouds and looking down at the earth and knowing that he was going to come here to be tested and knowing he wasn't going to be here very long. I just think he had a feeling that he wasn't going to be on this earth very long. And he just made the most of it.
So,
getting an echo.
Yeah, it happens. Skype, our good friend Skype, connecting us today. Thank you, Skype, for the echo. So my interest, I suppose, in the relationship that you had with Dave is if you were in a room with him today, nothing had changed. Just suddenly he appeared in the room. What would you want to talk to him about?
Well, that's an interesting question. I haven't really thought of it, but now that you brought it up, I suppose. Oh God. The worst. When I think of Dave, and I was so close to Dave, I could feel the murder. The pain, the feeling of drowning is the worst feeling. You can't really describe it, I mean, unless you hold your breath for underwater. He drowned on his own blood. And DuPont drowned on his own mucus. He died of COPD and emphysema. Which is ironic because, it's like he made Dave die by drowning on his own blood. And then here he dies 14 years later, drowning on his own mucus. It's just, I don't know. It's just ironic. The whole thing is just ironic. I don't know. I guess I couldn't really ask him what did it feel like to die, drowned to death? I couldn't ask him that question, and he couldn't answer it, But that, jeez.
I mean,
I don't know.
the reason I
how
asked
he's
the reason
doing right now in heaven. Like, what's he feeling like? What's it like up there? Who he's surrounded by. Who did he meet? Is Jesus Christ? With him, and did he meet God the Father? Did he meet Joseph Smith? Did he meet Gordon B. Hinckley? Did he meet all these people that he have died? I guess that's what I'd want to know, how he's doing right now. What he's doing.
So you don't feel like there were any unsettled issues or things that you would want to go back and resolve or talk out or?
Well, I mean, he knows I loved him, right? I mean, what more is there? I mean, no, I don't think there was any unsettled issues. There is one thing I would like to know. Was he able to forgive DuPont for murdering him? I would like to know that. I think he has, but if he just appeared to me like just now, I would ask him, how is it done? How is forgiveness done? Or, has he done it? And if so, how have you done it?
Yeah.
What's it like?
Have you forgiven DuPont?
Forgiveness it's a word, and words are never the thing. And everyone has their own idea of what it means to forgive. And, to me, I have tried to understand, what it was like for DuPont to grow up in the environment he grew up in, and what the sick and all the sick and twisted, how sick and twisted he was, and all the things that caused him to be so sick and twisted. And I've tried to understand, like how he could be brought to this place where he could commit murder. And I think I can understand, because he has no feeling for other people. He just doesn't. I mean, it's hard to believe, because he's such a, I don't know, he was an athlete, he was a swimmer. He was a pretty good swimmer. And I don't know, he really got screwed up bad when he was thrown onto this fence by one of his mother's horses. He lost his testicles, and it just screwed him up. I think that's what screwed him up, the hormones, the lack of hormones, or just the lack of, having that, that thing inside you that makes being a man a man.
Oh boy.
I think if that happened, I don't know what it would be like if that happened to me. I think I'd be pretty screwed up too.
So how about your mom and dad? How did your mom handle the news of Dave being murdered?
Well, I don't really know how to speak for them. I can't really speak for them. It's kind of obvious. I mean, how anybody would handle if their kid was murdered.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if you've got some night stalker in an alley who carves you up for your wallet, I mean, you may not like it, but you can almost understand the motivation for that. It's really hard to wrap my head around whatever motivation DuPont might have had to kill a guy who was, just this sweet guy who would do about anything for you. I mean, Dave was a guy who honestly would give you the shirt off his back. He wasn't somebody that you would think would be a target of that kind of hatred.
Right. Evil has no reason, has no motive. I mean, it just is. And it's the guy that put him away, Joe McGettigan. He was the same guy that put away Jerry Sandusky. And there was no motive proven at the trial. It was third-degree murder, but mentally ill. Joe McGettigan, the prosecutor, had a sister that was paranoid schizophrenic, and DuPont was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, but not insane. Insane means that you know the difference between right and wrong, and DuPont was not ruled insane. He knew right from wrong, and I know he did. I knew DuPont. I was living on the farm. He knew right from wrong. But when he's had a combination of cocaine and alcohol and prescription drugs and maybe some organic paranoid schizophrenic, in his DNA. I mean, they interbred. The DuPonts interbred with each other, going back to, I'm not sure how far it goes back, the inbreeding, but it creates freaks, a freakish kind of, his nose was real big. Like, there's something wrong with the DNA. It's like you got to let the genes breathe, and usually, like if you breed a race, like one race with another race, the children turn out really beautiful kids. But if you like breed within your own family, you get freaks and all kinds of weird stuff happens.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I wasn't trying to push you on your parents, but it just seems to me like it must have been a pretty incredible heartache for them, and
I'm sure.
I don't know. It's kind of scary that, I know how a son adores his mother. You think my poor mom would have to go through that. It's just horrible. And so I was just curious how they dealt with it. Did they go to the trial? Did they get involved that way, or?
Yeah, they went to the trial. My mother did. My father, I don't know. He was, I don't know. It going to the trial didn't really do anything for him. Dave was already dead and gone. You're not going to bring him back with a trial or anything else. And the system already had DuPont in its grasp. There was nothing more my father or anybody could have done really to, put DuPont away. They asked me to testify about his drug use, which I did. I didn't really like doing it, but I thought, if he doesn't get convicted, then his kids may never get, a settlement. They may never get taken care of financially. So I thought, well, okay, I'll go do it. And it was not fun. The whole thing was a terrible, ugly, just everything was just terrible and ugly, and nothing good really came of it. It was, I don't want to,
So let me ask you, because I'm pretty sure that Dave would probably tell you to just let it go and move on, but we're in our 50s now, and moving on has a different meaning than it did when we were in our 20s or even our 30s. You said it's hard to have your life defined by this single incident, but what do you think Dave would tell you to do?
Move on.
That's what I think he would tell you to do. Problem is, how do you do that? It's easy to say move on, but your entire adult
I know.
persona is built on a foundation of you being this champion, this mega athlete at a really, really high level that very few people ever achieve. I mean, you're 1% of the 1%, and it's like, wow. It's hard to, and I know, and it may not be the same, but I know from being a championship radio guy at one time, having close to 300 radio stations carrying my show nationwide, and having a pretty big name in the business, and going from that to almost nothing overnight, had a real effect on my general day-to-day mood. When you are out in there in the spotlight, you're the guy, and suddenly you're not the guy. It's a really hard thing to deal with. But when you have a gold medal, you're going to always be the guy. You know what I mean? Like, no one can take that away from you.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm happy I'm me. I mean, I didn't kill Dave. I know that other people define me a certain way, but that doesn't mean that's the way I define myself. I know who I am. I know what I can do.
How did the story become a movie in Foxcatcher?
Well, after the murder, I had switched to from wrestling to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and a new sport, cage fighting, was invented in 1993. It came to America from Brazil, and I had a match with the best jiu-jitsu fighter in the world, and in the BYU wrestling room, I was the head wrestling coach of BYU. And I had this match, and it opened my eyes to a new world of submission holds that I had never learned. And I became a student of his student, and his name was, the guy that I fought was Hickson Gracie, and his student was Pedro Sauer. And I got a black belt from Pedro Sauer. And in 1996, Pedro asked me to train a guy that was going to compete in the Ultimate Fighting Championships. And back then it was no holds barred rules. It's different than the mixed martial arts rules today. And I agreed to train him for this, and it was a frightening sport. I mean, it's just brutal. And I was like, man, you guys are committing freaking homicides in there. And I agreed to train the guy, and I broke his hand by accident. But I went to Detroit to be his corner man, and the doctor wouldn't let him fight. And so I took his place, and I fought and won. And in 12 minutes by TKO, and against the previous runner-up. And I was so happy that I had ended my athletic career that way, going out a winner, that instead of having to live with the fact that I lost in the '88 Olympics. Now I could say I went out, winning UFC 9. I was so happy. I decided, you know what? My kids don't know what their dad did. I had 3 kids at the time. I had 2 kids at the time. And I said, I should at least write down everything I did in my life. So I did. I just said I did this. I was born here, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, boom, 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 boom. And I wrote my entire life story out in about 2 weeks. And then I just, for like almost, as without thinking, I just sort of sent it out like in an email to about, 7 or 10 people or something. And it just got circulated, and it got into the hands of a guy who said, man, that's a great story. I bet I could turn that into a movie. And this guy's name was Michael Coleman. He became the executive director of Foxcatcher. And he got together with Tom Heller, who was the producer of Precious, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture. And they formed First Vision Entertainment, which went around the nation looking for studios to produce it. And then Heller went to a DVD signing called of a movie, a Bennett Miller DVD signing called The Cruise. And he put my story down in front of him and said, "This is the next movie you're going to want to make." And I don't know what was in the package. He may have focused more attention on the murder than I would have wanted. I don't really know what was in the package that he laid down in front of him. I assumed it was just my autobiography, but later on I learned there was more focus on the murder, or that part of my life, that part of my story. And so from I guess it was about 8 years later, it was purchased, and then it was renewed. The life rights agreement kept getting renewed every year for like a long time, like 8 to 10 years. I think it was about 8 years. And then it finally, Annapurna Productions, Megan Ellison, her studio purchased it from Bennett Miller's company, Nobleman, and it became a movie in 2013. They actually released it in 2013 and then pulled it off the shelves because the director didn't like the final version, and he worked on it for another 7 months or something, and then released it in 2014. And that's how it happened.
Wow. Has it changed your life at all? I mean, has it given you any kind of public accolade or anything happened or has it just been a drag? I mean, sometimes these things are worse because they're done.
Yeah, I get it. It's, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a mixed blessing. I have actually started this speaking career where I am hired. I signed with Kepler Speakers. They're a keynote speaking company, and companies will hire speakers once in a while to come speak to their sales force or whatever. And so I go around, I do these speaking engagements, and my status as a person in the United States, legally changed from a private citizen to a public figure, which is, it's not that great, it's just not. And, it's, I know you are, Roger, you're a public figure. You know about that.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, it's, the book has become a New York Times bestseller. That's one good thing. I know people, they always tell me how sorry they are for what happened. But, I never intended for my life story to get people to tell me how sorry they are. I never wanted people to feel sorry for me. I hate that. And anyway, I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me.
Well, I came away from Foxcatcher with maybe a unique view. And having known both you and Dave growing up, maybe that was part of the reason that my view developed. But I walked away from the movie saying, that's awesome that the history, the incredible commitment and the journey of these two brothers who I knew as a child has been memorialized forever in a movie that will always be out there. Number one, telling the story about how terribly difficult it is for wrestlers to survive, because wrestling, I think, is a fading sport, unfortunately. And more importantly, it just memorializes the fact that two brothers ended up at the same Olympics, winning gold medals in the same sport, and going on to be even greater achievers and world champions, etc. I mean, it's a great story. It's a great part of history. It's, even though the movie may not have depicted it exactly as it happened, it's close enough, for horseshoes, right? It's like people will know about what wrestling forever. That movie will be out there forever, as long as the human condition continues on, whatever form it does. That movie will always be out there as kind of a memorial to your brother and to his murder, kind of outlining the horror of all that, but more importantly about the journey that two guys had to take to get to the top of the wrestling world. It's a pretty incredible story. If you really, I'm sure that's why it got nominated, because there's a depth to the story. That cuts because it's heartfelt, because it's real. It's Americana at its greatest I mean, it's hard to describe. So the movie will forever be out there. People will be watching it on Netflix, 1,000 years from now or whatever. And they'll say, gosh, that wrestling must have been a hell of a tough sport, And that DuPont guy, man, that guy was nuts. I mean, the DuPont Chemical Company will be around forever, right? So I don't know. I think that there's some good that'll come over time. And it certainly, ensures that Mark and Dave Schultz live on in perpetuity in the form of a movie. So the story, even though I know the story's not perfect, but I mean, they didn't get me in the story, so I know it's not perfect.
It's you're right. That will be out there in the public forever, and so will the book. My book, my autobiography, Foxcatcher, the true story of my brother's murder, John DuPont's madness, and the quest for Olympic gold, and also the 30 for 30 ESPN documentary, The Prince of Pennsylvania.
Right, but you have to tell people that, because a lot of people won't know what a book is in the future. So, folks, a book is TV for smart people. There you go.
Right. Exactly. Nobody reads anymore. I learned that. I just did I go around and do these speaking engagements, and I always ask the audience, how many of you have seen the movie Foxcatcher? Like half the people or more than half raise their hand. And say, how many of you have seen The Prince of Pennsylvania, that ESPN documentary? Like half or more than half will raise their hand. Like, how many have read the book? It's like nobody. Like maybe 4 people. It's just like, I'm like, really?
Yeah. Well, no, that's the way it works.
Yeah,
we're living in those times, and I'm as guilty as the next guy. I prefer a video or something real quick.
But, so do I, actually.
So we're lazy. We're lazy critters. Human beings are. So that's where everything's gone electronic. If you can read the book to me while I'm driving, that's good. There's a lot of audio books out there. Have you done your book in audio?
Yes, it's available in audio.
Oh, good. So
yeah, it's available in Russian, Italian, and it was just translated this last week into Mandarin.
Wow.
I know.
Oh. So today, the reason we're here, folks, is we just wanted to get together and just commemorate the 20th anniversary of Dave Schultz murder by John DuPont. That's why we got together, and I don't know how you do that effectively. Just sit here and rap and be a brother and an old buddy, I guess, talking about him, but I guess it's what we got,
That's all we got.
Won't be any parades or ticker tapes for Dave Schultz, I suppose. But I think I just speaking as a kid who grew up in a small town, being exposed enough to the family to know, he was just a super guy. Every time I ever saw him, he was friendly, he was smiling, he had a nice, kind thing to say. I don't even know why. He was just always nice to me. I guess he was like that with a lot of people. And I have some good memories. I have great memories, like the one of you coming up through Lithia Park at about 1976 and laying the big Indian kid out on his backside, the bully. And, a lot of guys were rooting you on that day because he bullied a lot of guys, And I never even thought to attack the guy, He was so big, I just left him alone. But we have these little memories, twin plunges, drowning your brother like a worm. And twin plunges was a swimming pool, a community swimming pool. It had a cold and a hot pool, great big swimming pools. And in the summertime, we'd all hang out there, and they had the little snack stand, and it was it was an experience. I still think about it longingly. I look back on those times. I grew up in this magical place that I don't think people really understand unless they grew up there, and it's really different now than it used to be. But, growing up in Ashland, Oregon was truly like growing up in a Norman Rockwell fantasy land. It was just an amazing little place. And, you guys were part of the magic of that place when we were growing up. And, I just remember Dave, seeing him in the park, seeing him at the pool, seeing him at the Varsity Theater, hanging out with him at school. Just really hard to imagine that he grew up and got murdered by some doofus like DuPont. But there you have it. So I'm glad to have an opportunity just to commemorate this moment 20 years later. I don't, you may or may not know, but I was on the air and I had probably about 200 radio stations listening to me. And my producer came in and handed me a story while I was live on the air during one of the breaks. And next to the story that she had clipped out of the newspaper was this, breaking news, Dave Schultz, blah, 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 John DuPont shot, blah, blah, blah. And I go, what the hell? And I was live on the air and I was tearing up. I'm like going, I'm like, whoa, wow, you just, and it wasn't even the story she was handing me. It was just cut out next to it, right? It just blew me away. And I just sat there and I told my audience, I just got this story handed to me, and I told them the story next to it. I start reading it, and one of my old buddies from, chums from school was murdered. And I talked about who you guys were and all that. And I remember Felix Samaron. Remember Felix?
Of course.
I hadn't really heard from Felix in a long time, and Felix called the show. And Felix was such a sweet, loving guy. He really was. And I don't think he ever called a radio show in his life. It wasn't really his style, but he called and just said, man, we gotta get Dougie, and we gotta talk to Mark, and we gotta do this, and we gotta do that. And he was just so concerned. And I guess he was just driving along in his little pickup, going from the Elks Club to a little drywall job or something when I broke the news. And I guess it just about killed him, broke his heart. So a lot of people loved you guys growing up, and they loved Dave. And anyway, I don't know why I'm telling this story, but it's just it's one of those sad moments in your life when you just happen to have a memory of something and go, wow, it was an important moment in my life.
I appreciate you telling me that, but God, I really do not want to be defined by anything sad. I know life is hard and life is sad. Everybody suffers, and everybody can relate to suffering and pain. But that's not the way I want to be remembered at all. Not at all. I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. I want people to know me for me. I want people to know Dave for Dave, not for, I know that, there's certain things you can't, they're sacred. You can't really, especially things like suffering, you can't really describe someone else's suffering. It's impossible. And so I don't want to cheapen that Dave's suffering with words. And I don't want to be defined by my life, by something sad.
Well, although there was a tragic end to Dave's life, that's indisputable. But there was a glorious, awesome, incredible story of a life well lived that probably doesn't get told enough. And maybe that is the hard thing to do at this point, 20 years later, is to try to put in perspective all the wondrous and great things that happened in Dave Schultz's life. And I don't know how you make people remember those things. I really don't. But clearly there were some other issues and other things and other moments and other events and other elements, other circumstances to his life and your life that have nothing to do with the fact that Dave was murdered by John DuPont. But in fairness, we are we are here today commemorating his 20-year anniversary of him being shot.
That's true. That's right, Roger. Thanks for pointing that out. You corrected me.
So that's the point of it, I guess, is that while it was tragic and while Dave had some awesome and incredible, fantastic things to memorize, memories to put away. Hopefully the kids and his wife had some decent memories to share into the future, and I'm sure your parents can tell some great stories. But, today it is the 20-year anniversary of being shot, and it's what it is. And so we're here just remembering it. I don't know that, I don't like to use the word celebrating because nobody celebrates somebody getting shot, I hope. But commemorating, we're commemorating. Memorializing a little bit, reflecting. And I'm just sad I didn't end up with his gun collection. So,
well, he had a good one, and I'm building my own now.
So what do you want people to take away? I suppose we're kind of at the end of this now, but what do you want people to take away from this little commemoration of Dave Schultz's 20-year anniversary of being shot?
I want them to celebrate life.
Celebrate life, enjoy life. Find reasons to be happy and joy-filled. I think that's what Dave would say. Get on with it, Don't waller around in pity.
Exactly.
Pick up the torch and run, brother. So, I guess that's what we do. We pick up the torch and run, right?
Yeah, and thanks for doing this, Roger.
Well, no, it's great. I'm happy to have had an opportunity to just kind of share the moment here, All right, well, we're gonna break it there. Today, 1/26/2016, commemorating the 20-year anniversary of the murder of Dave Schultz. Discussing it with Brother Mark Schultz. Mark, thank you. God bless you.